Hey, friends, I'm Dr. Molly, and this is a podcast for people who love their pets, like to laugh, and realize that life is hard, but dogs and cats help. I love veterinary medicine. I'm probably already obsessed with your pet, and I want you to know more about both of those things. So, welcome to the Dr. Molly Says podcast.
I'm excited to be on that. And you're also here with Questions with Crocker. I'm Dr. Crocker, an emergency veterinarian. And I guess I kind of have a guest co host today that is not my husband like it normally is. Instead, it's my bestie, my friend, small animal veterinarian, Dr. Molly, social media influencer. Love her. And we are excited to be here and talk about some really exciting, interesting things.
Yes, and we're not calling this an interview because we're just chatting.
We're talking.
Best chatting.
Yes.
So if you're listening to the Dr. Molly Says podcast, let me introduce you to my friend, Dr. Taneja Crocker. She is a private small animal practice owner, and she also is an emergency veterinarian who works with Veterinary Emergency Group. And we're going to dive into all of that. So why don't we start there? Because I want you to tell everybody more about those two very different, very cool things that you do. Tell us about your practice. I'll give you like 3 minutes. Tell me about your practice. I already know,
Okay.
but tell
Okay.
everybody. And then tell us about how much you work at what you do there.
Okay. Awesome. I've been a veterinarian for 16 years and I started out in equine, which I think will pertain to the conversation we're going to have. Lots of experiences, but now, yes, I own a general practice. I've owned it for a little over 3 years. I bought an existing practice from an older veterinarian and grew it from 1 to 3 doctors. And then we might add a fourth soon. So I'm excited. And I also was working for Veterinary Emergency Group and working emergency shifts. I do some speaking, training, traveling. And so they also allow me to do that. And basically, my life is chaos. I don't really know what it's like to have a regular schedule, but it is amazing because I've made it what I want to do when I want to do it. I love working emergency. I love surgeries. I love saving pets. I love helping owners at their worst time. But I also really like having a older practice that we try really hard to keep prices affordable, reasonable, and really help like the pets in the community. So it is weird because I kind of have my foot in like the private world and a little bit bigger corporate type world. So hopefully I can speak to some of these things that we're going to talk about because I really do see the business side of it and being on the front lines and what that looks like. Did I do
Yeah.
okay? Was that okay?
Perfect. I'm so excited. I was like, I want to talk about this, but I don't want to talk about it alone.
Mhm.
And we've been talking about it and we both want to talk about it more. And I'm like, Taneja's the perfect person because she literally has something to do with all of this.
And I have a lot to say. So,
You both have a lot to say. And I also started in equine medicine and I did my internship at a surgical equine practice. So I saw like top tier,
Mhm.
gold standard, expensive equine medicine too. So we're going to get into why that is important. So again, this is not an interview. We're having a chat, but I'm going to sort of introduce what we're talking about and explain why we're talking about it. And then we are both talkers and we love each other. And so I have a list to try to keep us on
Yeah, we
track.
get it. And we have ADD. So, like, let's try
Yeah.
to stay focused.
Okay. Recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
So, what we want to talk about today, there are several things, but really it's because there's just sort of this kerfuffle, this conversation going on social media right now, which we're both very active on, about emergency veterinary medicine. That's part of what the conversation is. It's kind of devolved into other things. But there is an influencer, a creator who has a lot of animals. And she was recently at actually my local veterinary emergency clinic. It was not a veg. And she had a bulldog who got out and got hit by a car. It's very, very terrible and tragic. And they found the dog alive, thankfully, rushed the dog to the ER. And the dog was seen at the ER immediately, was treated over several days.
2 days. Yeah. And oxygen. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 days in oxygen. This was a very critical dog. We're gonna talk about some of these details because I think it's important with
Mhm.
what happened in the ER, which you know. And so my understanding is, make sure I have this right. So the dog was in the ER for 3 days, it sounds like, got to go home, but then went into respiratory distress again at home and then was rehospitalized or retreated for a day or two. So a few days, that dog was seen and treated over with lots of different equipment and things and very critical patient. So, um, I do. So the complaint, so this person posted online about her experience at the ER with her dog. And she did say, it was like a YouTube podcast video. She did say that the vets and the techs that took care of her dog were great. But then she went on to talk a lot about the cost of that care and how she didn't feel like what she paid, which I think was a total of around
Mhm.
$15,000, was worth what she got.
Uh-huh.
And then something you and I both immediately like, oh, noted was that she said, I have a horse. She has lots of horses who recently had an injury and was treated, and it was so much less expensive. And so I don't understand why it costs so differently. So I'm going to shut up in just a second because I want Tanaja to talk about all these things. So we're not really here to talk about that creator or that specific experience, but I think it highlights a lot of different points of misunderstanding when it comes to
Mhm.
pets and the cost of especially ER and specialty care. Another thing that was really one of the bigger complaints that her followers talked about a lot was that she had to pay a deposit. I think she's calling it a down payment, before she could see her dog, is
Mhm.
what I'm not exactly sure if that's exactly how she said it, but it's what is being perpetuated in the comments.
Right.
People have used the words, they held her dog hostage, and said she couldn't see her dog until she paid. And so that's another point of ER medicine, point of pain, tension, whatever, that I really want you to talk about. So we're going to just talk about all of ER stuff first, and
Mhm.
then we'll kind of go through some of the bigger picture things that are involved here. So
Yeah.
do you walk us through like what that looks like when someone comes to the ER with a true emergency like that?
Yeah, and I am excited about this because I think, I did make a video that was a little sassy, and kind of maybe calling her out a little bit for the wildness of kind of thank you for saving my dog, but then a lot of things that made it seem like maybe she wasn't as thankful. And then the ending with basically what I paid, I didn't get the value for it, which is her dog still being alive. But, that was kind of the thing I think that triggered me. And I made a video and it triggered a lot of people. But in the comments, I really saw the need to still talk about why is emergency care as expensive it is, why is small animal versus equine care such a difference. And I think, coming from the equine world, I get it. But I do want to make a couple points just right off the bat. $15,000 is a lot of money. Absolutely. I don't know that I could just easily spend that amount of money quickly on my dog. The other thing I will say is if you tell me a hit by car is coming in as an emergency vet, I'm going to be really worried and we're going to assemble the troops because we know it could be the most horrific thing that we're going to see in a shift. Or it could be a dog that walks in and is just huffing a little bit, right? The extremes are just crazy with that. If you tell me it's a hit by car bulldog, we are going to have sirens going off. I mean, my team is going to be even more anxious about what's coming in and more concerned, because, in general, that breed does not do well if it is not breathing well. So I think that's another thing coming from the ER perspective of realizing how horrible these traumas can be for the owner, for the pet, and for us, and then also the breed. It does take it to a level that I think people just don't understand. So, one of the biggest things is absolutely you should not withhold a pet because of payment. Now, I don't really have to worry about that because I do work for Veg, and Veg is an open concept ER, which sounds weird to people, but basically, when you walk in the door with your emergency, like if this dog was brought into us, they would just bring it to the back. The owner would come, set it on the table. We would immediately start stabilization, and the owner would be right there tableside. So you're not away from your pet at all. And I really think that that is one reason why we don't get these types of complaints at our hospital. The care is still expensive. It is high quality care. We have oxygen capability, which I don't think a lot of people realize a lot of places don't have full oxygen capability. Like she said, I could have gone to my GP if it was during the day. No, you couldn't have. Your GP would have absolutely sent
No.
you.
If she came to us, if she called where I work and was like, "Hey, my bulldog got hit by a car. It's been there for a while. We just found it. Looks really bad." I would be like, "Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not come here go straight to the closest ER. Like your GP vet, yeah, would not have been able to do that.
They're probably amazing, right? Like, they would have done, but if it came to my GP hospital, the dog probably would have died because we don't have some of the capability that you have at a specialty or ER. So, that's another big thing, and I think that's probably what started the experience going more negative. You already have an owner who's very worried, very worked up, and then you take their pet away from them, and that is jarring, and they don't know what's going on, and they don't see what's happening. But I do think that stabilization is important, and seeing how much goes into stabilization is also helpful for owners to understand the value of what they're getting. So I feel like if she had been able to see what was going on and they were still talking to her about money and deposits, but those things happening simultaneously in the same area versus happening simultaneously in different parts of the hospital, the perception would have been different.
Yeah.
Um, so
I've
that
thought a
being
lot about that, like about veg in the context of this situation. So tell me this, at what point, so at veg, like if this had been at a veg, an open
Mhm.
concept PR, at what point would staff at veg have started talking to her about a deposit?
So, really, the initial stabilization and triage is going to involve a lot of us. And as a doctor, I'm going to kind of be asking her what happened and telling her what I'm seeing. So, this is what I'm seeing. This is what I'm worried about. I'm getting a lactate back of this high. Your dog's not getting great oxygen to the tissues. We need to give oxygen. We need to calm down. We're in pain. Let's give a pain injection. We need to get x rays. So, probably after that initial, the dog is not going to die in this moment. I've calmed it down, it's getting oxygen, would be when I would start talking about, this is all the things I'm seeing, this is what I think your pet needs. Probably the same timing as what happened at the specialty hospital, because you really need to know before you're giving, but you still don't know how it's going to play out. She said the dog had pulmonary contusions, which is, bruising. That can take up to 12 hours to fully develop. So
Yes,
no
I
matter
heard
what, yeah,
before it gets better.
no, so much worse. So even I've had, hit by car dogs that come in and they're actually walking in and they're just kind of a little tachypnic. So because they're painful, but they're not in full respiratory stress. But over 12 hours, it gets dramatically worse. So I try to keep these dogs no matter what. Her dog, unfortunately, did get worse and had to be in oxygen for quite a while, which is the most expensive thing that you can do in the ER.
Yeah.
Oxygen and then high level surgeries, most expensive thing. So I do think that's a great question, and it would have happened around the same time. We would have absolutely focused and stabilized the dog first, which I think they did. But once we have the information to tell you this is what we need to do and this is what we think an estimate's going to be, then we get into it.
Yeah. It would have felt different. The
Mhm.
perception would be different.
Absolutely, because you see everything happening. Wow.
Yeah. I do think this is a really important part of her experience to clarify because like I said, this is an ER that's where I live and practice and send patients all the time. And so I do want to kind of walk through what I think actually happened there. I mean, I was not there. So I wasn't there.
Neither of
But
us were. We were
we were
not.
not there.
Yeah.
But what I know typically happens there, and from what she very like explicitly described in her other content, is that she called the ER. She told them she was coming, that her dog had been hit by a car. She thought she said that they were waiting on her when she got in the parking lot and whisked the dog away into the hospital. And
Mhm.
so they took it into their treatment area to stabilize it, like you said. And then I'm sure they then sort of like escorted her to the waiting area to like a reception desk to talk with the CSR to get all of her information in, the dog's information in, to relay what they needed to the doctor. And this is something that I sort of had some discourse with people in the comments of these posts about, I'm not sure that her dog was held hostage. And this, you can speak to this, but I know this about ER medicine because even in GP medicine, we see emergencies during the day. And so when we're stabilizing something like that, you spend money really fast. Like
Mhm.
stabilization and starting some of those things can get expensive really fast. And the fact is that some people, when they come in with a dog with a really severe injury that's maybe doesn't have a good prognosis, they might choose euthanasia in that situation, and cost could be a factor. And we're going to talk about this. Like, nobody wants that to be the deal, but sometimes that's part of the conversation. And so, to me, it's almost more kind to say, hey, we're trying to stabilize your dog. The prognosis is really, really poor. The chance of us saving your dog is really low. And even if we can, you're going to spend, in her case, $15,000. So unfortunately, we would need to be sure that that's a possibility for you. And so we just need to know if you want us to keep going.
Yeah.
And for some people, most people, that's a kindness to say, hey, we want to save your dog. It's going to cost you a lot of money.
Mhm.
Can you do that? And
And
Dr.
the timing's never good. Like, it's
No.
I tell people all the time, like, we have to talk about this, and I hate that we have to talk about this right now. Do we want people to have to make decisions about their pets based on finances? Absolutely not. But until, we're getting subsidized like human medicine to do everything and still get paid, it has to be a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of human friend doctors, and they say, they can't imagine all the decisions and all the things they have to do, and then on top of that, having to put a monetary value on a pet's life, it is a level of emotional difficulty and turmoil and mental anguish that I don't think people realize we do experience in this profession. And if I could just do everything for free, I would. But I cannot keep the doors open, have the equipment that we need to save a pet at that level, and pay the team well for being there in the middle of the night and not charge anything. Like, it's the reality of veterinary medicine. Now you can say it's really expensive, and it is. $5,000 a day is a lot of money to save a pet. But it is where we're at. And I don't think people realize how hard we try to balance what things cost pet owners, but being able to take care of our team and our business. Like,
Yeah.
it is the hardest thing that I do as a veterinarian and practice owner. And
Yeah.
I struggle with it all the time, um, because I want to save all the pets. So the other thing is, in Texas specifically, there's a law. There's a law that we have to say, this is how much this is going to cost you, and you have to approve it.
Right.
And we kind of do that, when we can, but I will get in trouble if I run up a big bill and then expect an owner to pay it, and I was not transparent about that. And I hate that. I absolutely hate having these conversations and telling somebody, I can do a lot for your pet. This is what it's going to cost, and having to make a decision based off that. So I want to make sure pet owners are aware of that. It is not something we enjoy. It's not something that, you know, is a fun part of our job, but it is a part of our job. And we try to do it as kind as we can. And,
And
but
like you said, it has to be a part of our
it
job.
has to. It has to.
And I would say for me, and I plan and have all the hopes and dreams to be a practice owner, but I'm not one yet. And so I just know for me, just as an associate veterinarian, there's a lot of that's my biggest emotional burden, I would say, as a veterinarian, is having to like navigate all of that in the context of money.
Mhm.
So I just can't even imagine. And like one day I will experience what you experience of just compounding that with being the actual owner of the practice. And there's a lot, those comment sections, there's a lot of villainizing of the people that own practices, both
Yeah.
corporate and private. And so we'll get into that a little bit, but it's hard. And I do think it's important for people to hear this from us, from veterinarians, as often as possible, that like, we don't want to talk about money.
No.
But
No.
if you want us to exist right now, the way the system is, we have to talk about money.
Yeah.
And some people, and I've been thinking about this, some people do view their pets with like a monetary
Hmm.
out. They
Yeah.
do. So I practice in a very affluent area in Tennessee near Nashville. And I have seen very wealthy clients who are like, well, I'm not spending more than $1,000 on a
Yeah.
dog, not just this dog, a dog. And so that's another, I think, perspective that we have is that not everybody feels the same way or views their pets the same way. And we also have to navigate that. And I think people definitely don't realize that like we have to have that conversation too.
And you don't know, like, I don't know about you, but there'll be some people that walk in, and, you try not to judge based off, but there'll be somebody that gets out of their very expensive car and they walk in and they have on all the things. And I'm like, this person is going to say, do whatever. And those people will be like, they just don't see the value of it. Right. Or their pet, they look at it a certain way. And I think that's probably an important thing to talk about. You came from equine. The difference in the way people do view horses, and especially like in a large operation that is a money-making operation, like a breeding operation, is going to be different in versus maybe how they see their small animals. Do you like when I made the shift from equine to small animal, the price differences shocked me, and having to tell people like this is how much something cost, it shocked me. So I understand the shock, right? If you mainly deal with equine large animal, hearing the numbers be bigger, I get it. What they're paying their team is way more. What equipment they have and what is available in small animal is way more in most places. And you really can't compare the two.
No.
And I would say that equine vets don't charge enough. Looking at what I used to do. I mean, I used to drive 2 hours to palpate 2 mares and I would make $120.
Yeah.
I spent 2 hours on the road to do that. Like,
Yeah.
make it make sense.
Yeah. The comparison of like something that happened with a horse in equine medicine to this very extensive critical ER care of a dog are like so much apples and oranges. I
I know.
just can't even. It is not the same.
But it
And I,
makes sense why she did it. Like, I don't wanna undermine,
yeah,
like
she doesn't understand the difference,
right. And my
which is
favorite comment was like, "Can you imagine seeing a horse in an oxygen kennel?" Like, can you imagine what it would cost to have an oxygen kennel for
that
a horse?
doesn't exist.
It
Yeah.
doesn't exist because no one would be able to afford it. Like,
No.
period. Period.
Yeah, and what we do so again, I worked in very, like, fancy equine medicine. What we do for small animals is so very different from what we can, like, even possibly do for horses.
Yeah.
Like, we used to always joke because I did small animal there too, like, there's about 7 things that can be wrong with horses, and there's, like, 50 things that can be wrong with a dog, right? And with horses, there's, horses get sick really easily and they try to die all the time, but it's usually one of a few things. And so there's like a few ways we treat them. And what gets really expensive with horse equine medicine is surgery. So, like colic surgery and orthopedic surgery. And I did see comments about, like, oh, my horse had colic surgery and it was only $7,000. So, and yeah, that's also a lot of money.
That is. That is. Yeah.
And yeah, a lot of horses have colic surgery. It's like a 3-hour ordeal. They come in, they get worked up, they go to surgery, and that equipment is expensive, and they have surgery, and then a lot of them, recover in the hospital for a few days, but their recovery is them standing in a stall, and they get monitored, and they have fluids, but it's very different. That's a very much more controlled environment than what's happening in a small animal ER specialty center with a bulldog.
Yeah.
And so there's nuance there, and equine veterinarians get paid like half of what small animal
So I was
veterinarians.
about to say that. Like, when I was
And it's
equine
not
in
enough. They
no,
don't get paid enough. So,
no.
like, and by the way, pet owners, if you're a horse owner too, this is an important part of this conversation. Equine vets are disappearing at a very rapid pace. So, like, you're looking at 2 people who used to be equine vets and are not anymore. And this is why, because they don't get paid enough. And so one day, if that doesn't change, there aren't going to be equine vets anymore. Period.
Yeah.
Period.
Like, putting numbers on it, I mean, equine internship, I made $30K, but it was in California, so it was a higher
24. I made $24,000 my internship.
and then when I got out, I made 65,000 was my salary, and I did a lot of emergencies, and I think I got it up to, like, 80, but I
Oh,
worked
wow. I did not make that my first year.
but I worked 80-hour weeks. I worked 6 days a week. I was on call 50% of the time. So I worked the amount I got paid per hour was very, very low. And guess what? I didn't have technicians. I did everything on my own. So, the costs we were charging owners was less, but the overhead is less. So it's it is hard, and I try to understand because this happens in the ER with like parvo. Like, I will see a puppy, oh, it's parvo, and I go into my spiel, what questions do you have? Well, what's parvo? We deal with parvo all the time, so we forget sometimes that the public is not aware of some of these things. So again, that's why we're here to talk about it. What is the
Yeah.
difference between small animal and equine medicine, and why does it cost difference? It's because of the overhead. It's because of how much people get paid. It's because of the extensive nature of what you can and can't do. It's because of the equipment that is available. You don't even have oxygen kennels in horses. Like those are some of the very simple points to answer
Yeah.
the question, right?
So, okay, while you're talking about that, expenses, overhead, let's talk about, especially in ER and specialty practice, let's talk about why that does cost more in general than GP. And another, because I want you to go with this, but before we talk about this, something else that I saw a lot in the comments is that pet owners were talking about, you know, vet medicine is too expensive across
Mhm.
the board. And they're talking about GP care and preventative care and
Yes.
spay and
Yes.
something that I think is really important to remember is that ER and specialty veterinary medicine is very different from GP medicine in a lot of ways. And you and I feel similarly about a lot of things in GP medicine. A lot of people are talking about like the corporate takeover,
Mhm.
and we both have concerns about that to a certain degree. But I think when we're talking about that, the context of GP medicine is very, very different than the context of ER and specialty medicine. And I feel very strongly about that ER specialty medicine, it's mostly corporately owned now, and that's okay. And you're going to talk more about that, like just the sheer cost to have one of
Yes.
those hospitals. It's near impossible for just like a random privately owned person to run an
Right.
ER. The cost is insane. You can't do that. So, so you talk about that. So, like in the context of what happened to this bulldog, let's talk about all the things that went into this bulldog being seen at the ER and like why that does get to $15,000 so fast.
Yeah, I mean, just to put it in layman's terms, like when I work overnight ERs by myself, right? And in that building, I have usually a CSR, so someone at the front desk, and then I have 4 to 6 technicians with me overnight. So the labor alone to run a hospital that has 10 plus inpatients that all need ICU care and treatments every 1 to 2 hours, along with seeing all the outpatients, along with being able to jump into surgery when needed, it is a lot just to keep the lights on and keep the building going, right? Just to be available. And then on top of that, what we pay for that for people that are highly trained. I mean, I have people that if I'm in surgery and a code comes in, like if this dog had come in, my team absolutely could have started stabilizing it without me doing anything. And that is because they are very well trained. They have done certifications, they've done extra training, and you pay for that. And you should, right? Like we should pay high dollar for that. In my GP setting, I love all the people that work with me, but they cannot do a lot of the things that are done in the ER setting. And so the cost of, what you're paying your team, how many team members are available, plus the 24-hour availability, plus I look around and the equipment that is available to me. I mean, there's really no comparison. And I would agree with you. It's interesting the corporate side of things. And I think a lot of it is, like you said, you can't afford to open an ER. I actually know a couple people that have opened urgent cares and ERs. And it has been a struggle. It's been a struggle to keep the doors open, to pay people well, to be available and not have your prices be through the roof. So again, apples to oranges comparison, you can't do it. I do think, though, it is important with everyone, talking about their GP prices going up or the old vet sold and now it's more, it's corporate in this is, one, that's why you should support small private practices. If you really don't want corporate to, keep raising prices, especially in the preventative wellness medicine side of things, support people that have private practices. And two, like, prices had to go up. If you look at historically in small animal, we didn't pay our support team members enough. We didn't offer enough benefits. We, still don't pay a living wage in many ways. And we didn't keep up with inflation because veterinarians and vet professionals care. And we don't want to charge a lot more. But along with that, and this is like, there's so many things, right? But people getting their prescriptions online more, you're getting less revenue in the hospital. So you're charging more for services and your exams versus, things that you used to make money off of. There's a lot of economics that have gone into why veterinary prices have raised in the GP hospital. And if you don't know, you don't know. So I get why pet owners, used to go to a hospital and it's changed and grown and evolved, and what they can offer has changed, their capability. I mean, dentals now, we used to just take out the loose teeth and that were shaking around in the head, right? Now we can provide high level dentistry care. There is a price that comes with that. So, but I do want to make one point, and this is me being sassy. Like I can't not be sassy, right? Where I live, our average ACT is probably $220. So average client transaction, right? For like vaccine appointment, heartworm test, wellness, right? And I went the other day, I was sick and I got an IV infusion, like a liter bag of fluids, some vitamins, because someone was like, this will make you feel better. I'm like, okay. I didn't ask what the price was because I just know what fluids cost and what things cost. And I went to check out and it was $200. And they said there are people that come in there weekly to get it done. And I'm like, it is so hard to work in this industry because I look at the people that truly can't afford the care, right? And I want to help them. But then I look at the people that are spending $200 a week on their coffee and their IV infusions and just don't see the value in that yearly visit to the vet for vaccines and heartworm. And my mind is just, because how the heck do I help everybody? And how do I get them to see the value of what we're trying to recommend?
Well, it's like the creator that we mentioned, $15,000. So she said, I
The
don't think what I did was worth $15,000. And like her life is on display on her page. And I just thinking about like all the things she spends at least $15,000 on in her
Yes.
farm, like fancy farm animal life. I'm just like, okay, so does that say more about like the value of saving the dog's life or like more about what you think the value of that is?
Yeah.
Because $15,000 is a lot of money for most people. But it's interesting to me, especially working in an affluent area where she also lives, like
Right.
people who can afford it are often the ones that complain about it the most,
Yeah.
which is interesting to me. But yeah, the sheer like cost to physically do the things that need to be done to treat a dog like that, I just don't think people. It's
Understand it.
okay that they don't, but I don't think they actually understand how much that is like so fast. And I saw comments about like profit margins and all these corporations, and I'm like, I don't think people understand that like profit margins in veterinary hospitals are so very low.
Solo. Solo.
Like, so tight. And in an ER, like you said, like there you may have 10 inpatients, you might have 1 inpatient for like 24 hours. And so but you have to be stocked and equipped
To do
to
everything.
to do anything. Like
Yeah.
anything can walk through the door. So that's another difference with equine med. Like I said, there's only so many things you have to be stocked for. But like in small animal and at like a veg, they see y'all see exotics too.
Mhm.
So there's like so much that has to be physically be sitting in the building to be ready for that.
Yeah, and I think that, again, she didn't see it, so she didn't get the value of it, but I think the reason her stuff specifically was triggering is because of the amount of money she spends on other things,
Yeah.
and I think some of those things do make her money, so it's a business decision, right? Like a new barn, like, she can breed more and do more stuff, so, but, you
It's
know,
worth in her mind.
it's
Yeah.
worth it in her mind, yeah. But we see it every day. I mean, I see people spending money on things, and I think about what we're charging and what they're getting for what they're paying. And to me, I'm like, you're like, when I heard that the dog was hospitalized, had surgery, was in oxygen, was a bulldog, and had fluid on its chest, and I heard 15,000, I was like, oh, they got a deal. Like,
So many people messaged me that. So many people who
so
work
many
in it were
veterinary
like,
professionals were
"Wow,
like,
that's not bad." And I'm
yeah.
like,
'Cause
"Yeah."
I know because we know what went into it. So it does speak to like, are we missing an opportunity to combat the misinformation and missing an opportunity to show the value by not being transparent with what's going on, maybe, or letting them see the work we're doing? Because at Veg, I do think we get less of that. Um, and just online, I mean, the amount of news articles that come at veterinarians, and a lot of it is talking about the corporatization of things, but it feels personal to us, right?
Yeah.
So that's why you and I are on social media. I mean, I think to combat some of that and to educate and try to, and obviously we need to keep doing it based on this experience. But there are
Mhm.
going to be pet owners that are never going to understand the value and never going to appreciate what goes into it. And there is a component of this that wears you down over time because of that. And then you see another news article come out that's negative towards our profession, or hey, they saved this animal, but it costs them this much. So the messaging continues to be the same, and it does feel very much like we're being attacked. So I think that's why I made the video I made, why you were talking about it so much, is because we really want to stand up for our profession and we want to educate. And sometimes on social media, that takes a little bit of sass.
Yeah. To get the well, it's for people to watch it and to get the point across. And I think, I do think we all feel a little bit defensive of our entire profession. Like the ER where that dog was, I don't always have the best experiences with that ER as a referring GP vet, but like I feel so defensive of that hospital right now because I know that the ER doctors and the techs in that ER worked so hard to save that dog. And,
And they
she
can't speak out. Like, they can't say
Oh.
that they did it. So, and I got so many messages, like, where people weren't comfortable posting on, like, the overall threads, but messages saying, like, "Thank you." Like,
Mhm.
"I appreciate
Mhm.
you highlighting this. I appreciate you speaking
Right.
about it. I appreciate you trying to educate." Like, there's a lot more people in our profession that appreciated it versus pet owners that were like, "This is rage bait, clicky, whatever," you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah, because like, the insinuation that a veterinary hospital held someone's dog hostage and were like, "You cannot see your dog until you pay us money," like, that's a serious insinuation, and I understand that maybe there's a perception of,
I think it felt that way.
I think it's possible that it felt that way,
Yeah,
and,
and
like
that's valid, right? Like, I don't want to invalidate or other pet owners saying like, "Well, I did that's exactly what happened to me too." I don't wanna
'cause
invalidate.
that did happen. A lot of people commented like, "Oh, same thing happened to me."
Yeah.
And it's like, from our perspective, it's like, "Oh, that's not what happened to you," but, like, we should also listen, like, as much as we want people that feel that way to listen to what we're explaining, we should also listen and learn that communication, which is I say this all the time, is the most important part of being a veterinarian is communication. And if even if vet med's listening to this, if you don't work in an open concept ER, you can still communicate in such a way that like, "Hey, they're working so hard to get your dog
Yeah,
stabilized, and we don't wanna have to talk about money right now, but the reason we go through this with you at this point in this process is because we need to know how far you want us to go," or
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
And
and, I don't know about you, but a lot of people are like, "Well, but why do you have to get the deposit up front? I pay afterwards." And y'all, the amount of people that will tell me, "Do everything." Like,
yeah,
"Save my dog, do everything," and I will start doing everything and saving the dog, and then, ultimately we can't, or we get to the point where we're like, "Okay, we're stable, let's hospitalize," and I'm like, "This is the estimate," and they say, "I have no money." Like,
because clearly people don't always know what do everything costs.
yeah. No, but, like, these are people that legitimately are like, "I have $0." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"But you just told me to do everything, and I kind of gave you verbal quotes." Like, they'll lie to us. And
Mhm.
I get it, they're scared, they want their pet saved, but then that makes us a lot more like, "Okay, we need to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's." Like, we need to make sure we go over this estimate, they see it, they, sign it, they give the deposit because so many people have lied and not paid. And so then you just get, I don't know, like I get worried about it and that we're going to do all this work and not
Well,
get paid.
and this brings up an important point, and Dr. Emily King talked about this a little bit in the video she made about it. So, okay, reality is a lot of people can't do $15,000, right?
Mhm.
But this is the reason for estimates because now this bulldog situation is different because that's a very critical situation where it's like sometimes you either have to do it all or choose euthanasia because
Yeah.
that dog's not going to live otherwise. But there are a lot of scenarios where a dog is sick and an ER may come up with a plan that, or a specialty hospital that does cost a lot of money. And giving that estimate to pet owners allows them to say, I cannot afford this. And like
Yeah.
Dr. Emily King said, if the pet owner then says, I can't afford this, is there another option?
Hmm.
then there and not and I will say this is a place that I think specialty medicine and vet med could improve.
Yeah.
They and ER in some situations, that doctor should have the ability in most situations to say, okay, that was option A that I gave you. That's like the best of the best, gold standard, like we call it. If you can't afford that, let's talk about another option
Yeah.
or what can you afford? And let's see what we can do within that budget. And that's another important reason for estimates so that people can see here's what this costs
Yeah.
and be honest and not lie and say, okay, I can't do that. What else could we do? And sometimes there isn't something else to do because, like in a bulldog that's been hit by a car, you either go all in or you just can't. Um,
And
but
I
I
do
think,
think that brings up, don't you think that brings up an important point of like having to make financial euthanasia decisions, which, a lot of people did say, well, if she hadn't been able to pay, what would happen? Would the dog just die? Would the dog suffer? And and I would say there's maybe 5% of cases that really the decision is like you do everything or you put him to sleep. Like I could say like a parvo dog that is lateral is dying on me and needs all the things to try to live. Like we need to either humanely put them to sleep or we have to be all in
a
because
GDVs that are
it's suffering. Yeah, a GDV. Something like this could be considered it because the dog's in respiratory distress. And if you don't do something, he's going to suffocate on the fluid and bruising in the chest and die a horrible death. So, yes, it sounds bad to say the dog would have to be put to sleep if you can't afford it, but it's because it will die a horrible death and a painful death if we don't do that. But again, that's a very small percentage of cases that you actually have to make that decision. There's a lot of ways that you can do plan B, C, D, E, F, try to stabilize, try to get them to their GP in the morning, try to give them options, but there are some, yeah, where that's the decision that we're at. And it's not because we don't care as veterinarians, because we know how much it'll take to get this pet through this. And, it's funny because people will be like, well, my dog broke its leg and I didn't take it in, or I did. And then, it was going to be $6,000 to fix it. So we just took it home. And man, that dog's alive 10 years later. So your dog hung out with a broken leg for who knows how long. And, I'm
yeah.
glad it's still alive, but what?
Yeah. Yeah, this brings up something I talked about in my story too, like, right, some animals can survive a
Mhm.
lot of things. Doesn't mean they do well, and it doesn't mean that they're comfortable, and so I think this brings up this kind of philosophical thing that I talked about of, veterinary medicine has come a long, long way, and you and I were on a podcast recently together with Dr. Gary Marshall, and we talked about James Harriet, and I keep
Yes.
thinking about this because you were like, "Oh, that's not real." I think you said he's a liar,
No,
which
I said, yeah, James Harriet lied. Yeah.
but but I thought about that when thinking about all of this because, we have advanced vet med so much so that there are ERs where you can take a bulldog who can't breathe in its normal life and it's in respiratory distress, has been hit by a 2,000-pound car, and it's dying. You can take it into an ER and literally save its life like,
Yeah.
in a miraculous way. Okay.
It's a miracle.
James Harriet would not have saved that dog. Okay.
No, no.
And I feel like we're in this weird time in veterinary medicine where part of our like American and like developed world culture is our pets are our children.
Family. Yeah. Yeah.
Some people feel that way about their pets. And so they have been really excited that we can do all these things for our pets to keep them alive and keep them comfortable. And so with that advancing of the medical care comes cost
Mhm.
because you cannot expect, I think people romanticize this idea of like James Harriet, all creatures great and small, like you're just small town vet. And you and I both want to preserve that to a certain degree,
Yeah.
but you can't have like what he wrote about and then also be able to save a dog that's been hit by a car and is that sick.
Yes.
So and they cost the same thing.
That's what I was gonna say. I mean,
You can have both, but they don't cost the same thing.
no, no.
And that's a fact. And if you only want to do like James Harriet style care of pets, that's fine. But you can't then go to an ER and ask them to save your dog miraculously and then then I mean, you can, but you really shouldn't then complain about the cost because it tracks. Like, if you want that, and I said this in my story, I thought we wanted that. So we can't have our cake and eat it too, right? So you can't ask vet med become very, 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 very savvy and special and miraculous, and then also ask us to keep it the same cost as it was when that dog would have automatically been put down.
Yeah.
Um,
Or it would have suffered and died,
yeah,
right? Like one of the 2. Because they didn't even know the extent of injuries back then because they didn't even, they weren't able to image and do x-rays. And
yeah,
so yeah, I mean, it makes sense because I would say from the time I wanted to be a veterinarian to now, the advancement medically is insane. And even the specialist that you have and the training that you have for regular veterinarians that are doing emergency work, like the things that I do, I don't think I imagined I would be able to do in vet med. The hardest part though is I don't know which type of owner I'm dealing with without just talking to them about the case and money. So I
yeah,
think some people see it as like I'm trying to take money from them and they don't see the value. But how do I know which owners do and which owners don't? And which
yeah,
owners are, being honest about it. And that's the hard part. And probably my assumption would be, in talking to her, she's like, okay, 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 and signs things and does things. And then at the end, when you look back, you're like, wait a second, what happened? And it was just the emotions and all the things. But I guarantee you they talked to her about how expensive it could be, kept her updated along the way financially. It's just that ending number was what really got her. And it's
yeah,
$5,000 a day to save an animal that would not have been saved in the past and could not have been saved at her GP. I fully believe that. And that's, I think, why we were frustrated about it. Like,
yeah.
and I don't know. I don't know.
So somebody commented, "You should have gone to your country vet." The country vet would have said, "Put the dog down." Like, I
Or you have to go to the ER. Like, that would have been
yeah.
right?
And I want to acknowledge here because 'cause we're talking about someone who can afford $15,000 worth of vet work. So I do want to acknowledge the fact that, like, a lot of people couldn't. And like you said, this is one of those 5% scenarios where it's kinda like you have to go all in or we have to talk about a really hard decision like euthanasia, but there's plenty of other scenarios, like we've said, where a lot of money can be spent to treat patients, and the average person doesn't have that. And I think that that situation and just this conversation lends itself to talking about, solutions to that and ways, because I want people to take from this, like, okay, how can we change some things? And I think pet insurance is part of that conversation. There's a lot there. It's a whole other podcast
That's a
series.
whole nother yeah.
But I think we can talk about it a little bit. And then also something that I think, and I made this people, I don't know how people will take this, but what kind of dog you take home or buy has a lot to do with this. And I don't think it's fair to have a dog, a breed like a bulldog, and not have some responsibility in that, and not have that dog insured. So that dog wasn't insured. And it's an English bulldog, and English bulldogs, Frenchies, a lot of pugs, brachycephalic dogs, they have so many problems. People do know this. This is well known now. You and I talk about it a lot. I mean,
I
lots
was
of
gonna
people
say,
talk about this. People know this. And so some of this is part of the issue. I have a hard time with this. I'm like, okay, it's hard for me when people have these breeds.
they didn't plan
They
accordingly.
didn't plan, and they got a dog because of what it looks like. Doodles, I know people say I hate on doodles, but, like, it's another perfect example of this very popular breed that
That's
has a
really bad.
lot of health issues, and then people complain about the cost of veterinary care, and I'm like, "It th you kind of signed up for this," and so and that's not just people who buy dogs, because if you get a dog from a rescue who's a Frenchie, you're also signing up for that, and that rescue should also be responsible and let you know that this is what you're signing up for. So I think those 2 things, and I think pet insurance is a big part of it. Um,
If you can afford it. Like I do, I get the pet insurance especially having like emergency pet insurance where but the way pet insurance works in, vet med is you still have to pay up front and you get reimbursed. So it works well for people that can afford the premiums and afford still to pay for the emergency and then get reimbursed. Absolutely. I think for anyone else that has these dogs, I mean, you need to have a savings fund or something set aside for, I mean, any pet in general for those things that can happen, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you do in the middle of the night to get access to money can be really, really tough. So the biggest thing is I think we recognize that veterinary cost has gone up and we recognize that's something that pet owners still are struggling with, but it doesn't mean the value isn't there.
Yeah.
And that was the statement I think that like struck me the most was starting with these people are amazing. My dog is alive because of them, but I don't think the value is there for what I paid. Those two things didn't align in my brain based on what this dog needed. And
Yeah.
so I don't want
Yeah.
to undermine anyone else's experience as a pet owner and what they had to spend or having to make financial euthanasia decisions. I think all those things are valid and are a part of our profession and hard. I want people to know though that it's hard for us too. And I don't enjoy having to have those conversations or but it's a part of veterinary medicine.
Yeah. 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 I always tell people, pet insurance, I do think what I think it's best for is these kind of situations. And
Mhm.
so I do encourage people ask me about it to get low premium, higher deductible plans
Mhm.
for hit by car,
Emergent situations.
whatever situations. And the other thing people should know is you can often get care credit at these ERs. And
Mhm.
so you can apply and use care credit to pay and then get reimbursed from your insurance company before you actually have to pay care credit back. So that's another solution for some people because pet insurance needs to probably stay a reimbursement system. I actually feel very strongly about that
Yes,
because
please. Yes,
do
please.
not someone commented like vet meds need to be like human med. No, it does not.
No,
That
no.
is not going well. So, no, we need to figure it out ourselves, but pet insurance should stay reimbursement. That is better, but you're right. You still have to pay when you're leaving the hospital or put a deposit down, and so that's where Care Credit, Scratch Pay, Cherry can help with those things to just float you that money until you can get reimbursed. Um,
Yeah, and
but
people always say, like, "Do you not do payment plans?" I'm like, "We do. We do third-party ones."
yeah,
So
we're not the bank,
and you
and
do
we're not a
have
lending.
yeah, I mean, you do have to have, decent credit to get approved for those things. And so it's always funny to me, when people are like, "Well, I know I won't get approved." And then I'm like, "Well, do you have any other resources or family or friends?" Like the idea that as a business, I don't know you and I'm just gonna like trust you're gonna pay your bill, but like you're telling me you have bad credit, can't get approved for any payment plans, and you have no friends or family that'll help out in some way. There's no other like it's hard for me because I want to help, but also there's like some red flags there of like and historically people don't pay their bills. They don't
Right.
pay the payment plan. And so again, people lying and approving things they're not planning to pay, that is really what has messed things up for other pet owners that are, and I have had people that say, "Well, I get paid in the morning. Can you just do A, B, and C? I promise I will pay." And I've absolutely done that. And I've put off
Yeah.
taking the deposit until the morning, especially with a hospitalized pet or something that they need something right away.
But
So,
that also happens all the time and people don't. I promise, and then they don't. I
yeah,
mean, many a vet clinic has been burned by
yeah.
"I promise." And again, like, we realize, like, it's hard, but you need your vet clinic to be open, and a vet clinic cannot be open if they just don't make people.
Don't charge things.
And I saw comments too of like, "Oh, these corporate vet clinics are for-profit businesses." And I'm like, every vet clinic, unless it's like a subsidized or like charity vet clinic, is a for-profit business. Like, what do you mean? It
But
has.
even nonprofits, they get grants and they get money from the government and they're
Yeah,
subsidized. And a lot of people on those boards are making good salaries, and a lot of those
yeah,
directors are making good salaries. So no one is essentially working for free, and they shouldn't be, right? Like, pet
Well, they
owners
cannot.
hopefully aren't working for free, and until vet school is free and it's free to own a business, it's just not realistic to be like, you should only charge me $100 for this emergency. So I think what we're doing is good in trying to get out like the capability of veterinary medicine, the extent we can go to, but then also the fact that people just need to be upfront and honest so that we can work with them within the budget
Yeah,
that they do have, because there's very few circumstances where it's euthanasia or you can pay.
yeah,
That is minimal.
yeah.
And people act like that's what happens all the time. And I'm like, no. Like, I work in the ER. That is not what happens
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah, and I think it's a good opportunity on the GP side for us to plug that, privately owned GP veterinary practices have the person who owns the clinic who's making those financial decisions in the building or close by, in the town at least. And so they can, in some ways, be more creative about how they still make that profit, but keep the doors open, keep things for their clients as affordable as possible.
Let me give you an example. I
Yeah.
am one of the few private practices in an area. And recently, like, the lab company that we send stuff to went up a little bit on our price. So I'm like, well, we need to go up on our price so that we can still pay for the people drawing the blood and pay for, just all the things. So our senior package, which has a CBC, a chemistry, a thyroid, a urinalysis, is $190. Okay. That's like for all of that. And we send it out.
Deal.
It's a deal. But I was stressing. We were going from like 175 to 190. And I was like, I don't know. So I was like, let's just call around. Like, let's call the practices locally. And again, I'm like the private practice, everyone else is corporate. $350, $450 for the same lab package. Like, there was none that were 200 at all. And I was like, okay, yes, there's a very significant
Fine.
difference between corporate and private veterinary practice prices when it comes to just regular general practice medicine. So if, as a pet owner, you are very cost conscious, try to find the local private practice and support them. Like, I want you to support me because that's the only way I can keep the prices what I have them at. But like, don't blame the entire veterinary community as a whole because of your bad experience that you had at a, corporate practice, because that's where you chose to go.
Yeah.
Like, be
And
aware of where you're going.
and I will say, in defense of pet owners, now it can be really hard
Yeah, true.
to know who owns the practice where you're going, because these groups now, most of them are buying private practices and the name doesn't change, the ownership just changes. And
Yeah.
so Um, there are ways to figure it out. You can literally ask someone who owns this practice. Um, but that's a new hard part of navigating. But I agree with you that it's important. And we're not saying that all corporately owned practices are bad and all
Yeah.
privately owned practices are good, or
Yeah.
one's necessarily better than the other, but there are differences. And I do think this is part of this big conversation. And I think we, as the veterinary profession, together with pet owners as a population, can work on this together. And I wholeheartedly agree with you that supporting privately owned practices that are doing things well is really, really important and will help in the long run, because we need both. And we need to support privately owned practice, and we need more people buying and starting private practices who want to do the things that you're doing, the things that I want to do, to keep vet med high quality, but also affordable.
Yeah.
Um,
And accessible. That's, I mean, really what we want. So I
yeah,
I think that we'll keep talking about it. And if people want to follow us on social media at
yeah,
dr.tanasia.crocker, and at Dr. Molly's, I think that we need to keep obviously educating based on the response to the videos and to other things. And we need to keep trying to do the best we can, but also people need to ultimately realize we're human beings. We care a lot. We literally give so much to this profession. And that's why things like that were so hurtful.
yeah, yeah. And hopefully this helps people understand what's happening in an ER in that situation a little bit better. But you can send questions if you want, specific questions. And yes, make sure to follow us, Dr. Molly Says Pod and Questions with Crocker and Dr. Molly Says and wait, what's your handle? Tanasia Crocker?
Dr.tanasia.crocker.
Yeah, that's right.
But you can also watch us on
Yes.
YouTube, and you can
Yes.
listen to us on Spotify or Apple. Harrison gets mad if I don't say all these things. And you can leave a review if you want. Hopefully the people that want to actually learn are listening to this, not all the people that, are mad at us right now. But
There are some of them, but we love you all
yeah,
despite
we'll
and
see.
your pets mostly. So
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, I will see you next week on the Dr. Molly Says podcast, and she'll see us sometime soon.
I'll see you when I get time to make another podcast. Thanks for having me on, Molly. I adore you. And thank you, everyone who listened with an open mind. And please let us know your thoughts.